There's an episode of SpongeBob that didn't end with a laugh. No goofy song, no wild chase through Bikini Bottom, just a strange, suffocating feeling. Like something wasn't quite right. And here's the kicker, it wasn't a later, experimental episode. It was episode 3, right at the start of the series. Most fans remember the early days of SpongeBob as nothing but jokes, jellyfishing, and Krabby Patties. But when you go back and rewatch episode 3, Tea at the Tree Dome, it hits different. Not because of what happens on the surface, but because of everything hiding underneath. The tension, the panic, the slow, strange descent into fear. This wasn't just a silly cartoon gag. For a lot of people, this was the first time SpongeBob felt dark, not edgy, but quietly intense, emotionally unsettling. And it stuck with fans in a way that still gets talked about. Here's why. It taps into something we've all felt. That sense of not belonging, being out of your depth, trying to impress someone while ignoring the fact that you're completely falling apart inside. In Tea at the Tree Dome, SpongeBob meets Sandy for the first time. She's tough, smart, cool, and he wants to impress her. One problem, her home is filled with air. SpongeBob's a sea creature. No water. No way to breathe. It's a simple setup, but if you've ever tried to keep it together during a job interview while your nerves were screaming, or pretended you were fine on a first date while panic bubbled under the surface, you know what this feels like. SpongeBob's desperation to fit in leads him to ignore literal, physical danger. And while it plays like comedy, there's something disturbingly real underneath. Kids might have laughed at SpongeBob gasping for water, but adults, we see panic, the need to please no matter the cost. This episode slips a gut punch into a goofy Sponge's smile. So why does Tea at the Tree Dome keep showing up in lists of SpongeBob's darkest moments? It's not violent, it's not creepy, but it feels real. The slow realization that SpongeBob can't breathe, that no one notices until it's almost too late, that's what sticks. It's not scary because of jump scares or music. It's scary because it captures something hard to admit, the quiet terror of vulnerability. Fans rewatching it as adults often say, I don't remember it being this intense. That's because the episode isn't trying to frighten. It's reflecting something you only fully understand once you've lived through it. At first glance, Tea at the Tree Dome looks like classic SpongeBob. Jellyfishing, jokes, and a squirrel in a spacesuit. Sandy shows up, wrestles a jellyfish, and SpongeBob is instantly impressed. Not romantically. He just wants to be her friend. So when she invites him over for tea, he's pumped. But as soon as he enters her dry, air-filled dome, something shifts. The music slows, the colors dim, the laughter fades, and we realize he's not in water anymore. He sweats, gasping, shriveling, but he says nothing. That's what makes it powerful. Not just that he's suffering, but that he chooses silence just to be liked. This is where the episode shifts from funny to quietly brutal, and if you're not paying attention, you might miss how intense it really is. Let's get into the part that most people missed as kids, but can't unsee once they watch it again, the metaphor. This episode isn't just about SpongeBob being out of water. It's about drowning, emotionally, socially, mentally. And it's all wrapped in a visual that's somehow both hilarious and deeply unsettling. Watch SpongeBob in that dome. He starts drying out slowly. His body cracks, his eyes sink in. He's visibly in pain. But he keeps sipping tea and smiling, trying to pretend everything's fine. That's not just physical comedy, it's a brutal picture of emotional repression, of putting on a brave face when you're falling apart inside. The air in Sandy's dome represents more than just an unfamiliar environment. It's a social space SpongeBob doesn't know how to navigate. He wants to be accepted. He wants to be liked. So he sacrifices his own well-being to fit in. Sound familiar? People do this all the time, especially kids and teens. They'll lie about what they like, hide who they are, even put themselves in uncomfortable or unhealthy situations just to feel included. SpongeBob isn't being brave, he's being desperate. And that's the subtext that takes this episode from funny to frightening. It's a metaphor for people-pleasing, anxiety, and the invisible pain of trying too hard. And most of us, we've been there. This episode nails something that almost no cartoon dares to touch: the fear of not being enough. SpongeBob isn't scared because Sandy's mean or because something terrible is happening to him. He's scared because he feels out of place and powerless. And instead of admitting it, he smiles through the panic. This is classic anxiety behavior. He hides his distress. He convinces himself he's fine. He avoids asking for help because he doesn't want to look weak or weird. The deeper message here? Sometimes the hardest thing isn't surviving discomfort. It's admitting that you're uncomfortable in the first place. There's also a layer of social anxiety running through the whole scene. SpongeBob's desperate not to ruin his shot at friendship with Sandy, even if it means literally choking in silence. That kind of self-sabotage, where your fear of judgment is so strong that you'd rather suffer quietly, is something a lot of people relate to, especially younger viewers who are still figuring out who they are and where they fit. And then there's the isolation. The surreal feeling of being trapped in a place you don't understand, with no one who speaks your language. For SpongeBob, that's the air-filled dome. For us, it's any place or situation where we feel like we just don't belong. When you peel back the comedy, what's left is a deep emotional moment. It's not just about needing water, it's about needing connection, understanding, and the courage to say, I can't do this alone. When Tea at the Tree Dome first aired, most of us were kids. We laughed at SpongeBob puffing up like a sponge balloon, screaming, "I need it," with bulging eyes and a dramatic gasp. It was exaggerated, ridiculous, classic cartoon stuff. But go look at the comment sections today. YouTube, Reddit, even old fan blogs. The tone is completely different. Fans rewatching the episode as adults describe it as low-key terrifying. Not because anything violent happens, but because it reminds them of real situations. Trying to impress someone at the cost of their own comfort, faking a smile while their brain screams for help, or being in a place that slowly drains them while they pretend everything's okay. Some fans have called it the most human moment in the show. Others say it's the first time they felt uneasy watching SpongeBob. The episode hits that strange intersection of humor and emotional pain, where it's so real that it's uncomfortable. What makes this even more powerful is how quietly it sneaks up on you. The episode never announces that it's making a point. There's no narration or moral. It just shows you something and lets it sit. That's rare, especially in a cartoon built on chaos and slapstick, and that's why fans keep bringing it up. It's not just memorable, it's personal. Now here's where things get even more interesting, because when you look at interviews or behind-the-scenes notes, Tea at the Tree Dome wasn't written to be deep or emotional. It was meant to be a light, funny introduction to Sandy Cheeks, a gag about a sea creature trying to survive on dry land. That's it. But that's the magic and mystery of storytelling. Once something's released into the world, the audience decides what it means. And the viewers took something simple and found real weight in it. Not because the creators said so, but because it spoke to something that felt true. This episode accidentally touched on real emotional themes: self-sacrifice, anxiety, fear of rejection. Not because it was trying to be profound, but because it showed a situation that looked like a joke but felt like something much more serious. SpongeBob, gasping for air, isn't just a punchline. It's a portrait of emotional suffocation, and that disconnect between what the creators intended and what the fans experienced, that's what makes this episode so fascinating. It shows how even the simplest scenes can carry deep meaning when they tap into something universal, even if it happens by accident. That's the kind of stuff that gives a cartoon staying power. Not just what it says on purpose, but what it reveals by accident. Decades later, Tea at the Tree Dome still holds up, and not just because it's part of SpongeBob's early golden age. It hits hard because its core moment, SpongeBob trying to hide his suffering to impress someone, never stops being relevant. We grow up, but that feeling doesn't really go away. We still find ourselves in rooms where we can't breathe, saying we're fine when we're not. This episode captured that emotional moment with such honesty, even if it was wrapped in cartoon absurdity. And that's why it sticks. It's more than nostalgia, it's recognition. You watch SpongeBob puff up and collapse. And if you've ever dealt with anxiety, imposter syndrome, or social pressure, your chest tightens just a little, and it's not just fans who are still talking about it. The episode gets brought up in video essays, TikToks, and think pieces dissecting SpongeBob's legacy. It's not the flashiest or most dramatic moment in the series, but it's one of the most human. That's the power of unexpected storytelling. In a show that's built on nonsense and chaos, this one episode quietly said something that stuck with people long after the laughs faded. It made us feel something, and sometimes that's way more powerful than just making us laugh. So, what does Tea at the Tree Dome actually teach us? It's simple. Even the lightest, funniest shows can hit us in the gut when they brush up against something real. SpongeBob's desperation to belong, his panic, his silence in the face of suffering. It's all dressed up in jokes and gags, but it hits like truth. That's the genius of it. This episode proves you don't need a heavy soundtrack or a dramatic speech to make something emotional. Sometimes all it takes is a sponge trying to act normal while he can't breathe. That's what makes dark cartoons so fascinating. They slide right past your defenses. You think you're just watching something silly until it hits you in a way you didn't expect. If that kind of storytelling hits home for you, you're in the right place. We break down moments like this every week, episodes that make you laugh and think, sometimes at the same time. So if you want more deep dives into the weird, brilliant, and occasionally disturbing moments in cartoons, hit that subscribe button. And tell us in the comments, what's your pick for the darkest SpongeBob episode? Because trust us, episode 3 was just the beginning.